Hi, I'm your host Vasco Duarte. Welcome to the Scrum Master Toolbox podcast, where we share tips and tricks from Scrum Masters around the world. Every day, we bring you inspiring answers to important questions that all Scrum Masters face day after day. Hello everybody, welcome to our Wednesday, the Leading Change episode this week with Anna Mbengam. Hey Anna, welcome back.
Hi Vasco, here we are again.
Here we are again to talk about one topic that I guess leaves many of us with some sleepless nights, because change isn't an easy topic for Scrum Masters, even though it is a topic we deal with almost every day at work. So Anna, walk us through a change process that you were part of, and like time-wise, chronologically, go through that process. And as you go through the different steps, highlight for us the tools, the tips, the tricks, the techniques you learned back then that you still apply today.
Cool. Thank you. I definitely, I have gone through several changes in my career, and one of which I will say I was working with a large-scale company, a technology team or company that wanted to have distributed teams working on different products. And the organization wanted us scale Agile practices to be able to help align across the teams, align the teams across the board. And it was an interesting one because for several reasons, right? I know sometimes with organization wanting to adapt SAFe or just Scrum in general, most of the time is what everybody else is doing versus what can we do, right? The learning process that come along with it. So the leadership, one of the things that I had to do or support to do was leadership alignment, understanding the why we're doing this, right? And the bigger part is, okay, now we understand why we want to do this. How do we want to move forward? There's going to be some trainings that needs to be happening. And now we're open to taking those trainings. And one of the challenge, essentially, that I experienced in that process was, yes, we know there's training that needs to happen, but we don't have the time to do the training because we still need to deliver, right? And also putting the teams, like, before we go through a last transformation like this, we need to be able to have piloted a team to see, is it working, is it not working? And how can we move forward from here? If it's, what are our learnings, right? And not all teams can be Scrum teams, right? To deliver their work. So one thing that essentially in that change process that happened was that the team, as I'm stating here, alignment with leadership, ensuring that we need to take trainings, we need to train everybody that's going to be on board, as well as have those piloted teams so that we can understand, truly, is this going to work for this team based on the project that they're working on? And if it's not, what are some of our learnings that we need to have? So once we've determined all of that, we're able to create the release trains with the different value streams that was needed. And the resistance that we got was from some of the trains already had preconceived, we're just doing this. Some people were just moving to roles as Scrum Masters, as product owners. And the challenge with that was really, they've been there for a long time, right? And now they're going through their role change. And they haven't done the training yet. So we're trying to move them into this and do the training at the same time, and them having to do the work and deliver at the same time. So it was a lot that was going. So I had to bring back leadership and tell them and say, we want to be intentional. And one of the things that the leadership has said to me was, don't you want job retention? I said, absolutely. I would love to have retention on here. However, I also am priding myself on making sure we're doing it right. Right. Because what good is it for me to come and help with this transformation and to leave and know that I didn't do what I wanted to do, right? So when I said that, it definitely set a different tone to the leader to leadership, and they were like, "Okay, Anna, how can we help? Right? What can we do?" So allowing some of these changes, conversation to come from leadership, helping the team to understanding their pain points, um, significantly help in that process because I think it was coming from the Scrum Masters, the coaches wanting to have this conversation, but really the team members not feeling as though they quite understood why they were even doing this to begin with.
Do I understand correctly that even though leadership had a clear why for the transformation, that information had not gotten to the teams, and the teams said we can't go to the training either because we are busy delivering?
Mm-hmm.
So
Yep.
how do you crack that nut?
We have to have a conversation. That's why I had to reset. We had to reset and have conversation with leadership and say, in order for us to be successful, we need to make sure we're taking the steps that is needed. And the people who are doing the work needs to actually know why they're doing this, right? Because those are the people that are being impacted the most, and also hear their pain points and their concerns, right? Because that's a it was such a top down approach that it hurts to this day to talk about it because I could feel from the people that it didn't feel like their voice was being heard much, right? And it was very combative to get certain things done. However, over time, with leadership buy-in, understanding the impact that this was having on the team, and understanding that we're not just here to just do these processes, but we're here to ensure that the team is happy. Because if the team is not happy, they're not going to be creative. We're not going to get innovation that we want from them, and they're just going to do what they're told, right? So once the leadership started learning more of that, they started inserting themselves a little bit more. Things that we would have been doing in PI planning or in the first phase of PI planning, even um, the first innovate and planning sprint, we allowed the leadership to come in and take more ownership into that process and helping being part of the conversation. And then spec and adapt, we also include the leadership into listening to those problems that the team was coming from the art level and having a chance to not go and say, well, that wouldn't be done. It's like, let's think about it. How can we make it better? Right? Not so coaching the leadership helped essentially bridge the gap between the team.
So if I understand correctly, it emerged over time that even though there
Yes.
was commitment and leadership buy-in, they weren't sufficiently involved with the teams. Therefore, the reason why wasn't being communicated, and also the teams did not feel that they had permission to take the time to go to training.
Yes. Yes. Absolutely. And another thing that we noticed was a lot of the decisions that team could make as far as like, do you want to be a Kanban? Do you prefer being a Kanban or Scrum team? Oh, let's talk to leaders first and see. No, actually, this is the way we're deciding to work, and what works best for you. Hey, let's do some workshop on what Kanban look like. Let's do some workshop on what Scrum look like. Let's do some workshop on what it will look like to have both, right? So you can be able to make the decision based on how you're working, right?
Absolutely. So supporting the team's own ownership of the change
Yes,
process.
exactly. Yes. So once they started doing that, or filling another team was a Scrum team. They wanted initially when they have rolled out the framework, 2 week sprints was something that was all teams need to do 2 week sprints. And then throughout, they realized that, and what some of the things that I kept reinforcing to them is we want to be able to experiment. You can do a 1 week sprint, a 2 week sprint, a 3 week sprint, a 4 week sprint. Figure out what cadence worked for you, right? So once the team felt, as long as it's within that PI, we can be able to figure out what is working. So as long as once the team got to start experimenting and realizing there was no backlash from leadership, they're like, oh, okay, we could do more. Okay, can we try that? Can we try this? What else can we do? right? They started exploring that ownership, taking a little more ownership in the process and say, this process is not going anywhere. We will need to collectively as a team figure out how we want to move forward. What are the changes? How do we want to be involved? The little or less you involve is up. The more or less you involve is up to you. It's also going to determine how successful you are at the end. So we need to start taking that collective mind, having that mindset that we want to improve it for us and how we work.
Absolutely. It's a great story of safe adoption. And for those of you who are not familiar, I'll put the link to the SAFE framework in the show notes. Thank you for sharing that, Anna.
Thank you.
Leading change is one of the core skills we must acquire, but it is only one of the steps towards our success as Scrum Masters. Tomorrow, on Success Thursday, we will talk about how to define success for the Scrum Master role. We'll cover tips on how to measure your way to that position, and most importantly, how to develop that focus on continuous improvement that is as important for Scrum Masters as it is for teams. See you tomorrow. We really hope you liked our show. And if you did, why not rate this podcast on Stitcher or iTunes? Share this podcast and let other Scrum Masters know about this valuable resource for their work. Remember that sharing is caring.